that wealthy individuals, the names of which I'm not sure have been released yet, have begun to fund a major project to study UAP that will be headed by astrophysicist Avi Loeb. I'll dig into that more later in this video. Here is how former chair of the Harvard Astronomy Department Avi Loeb responded to the UFO report that was published on June 25th in terms of what it means for science. This clip is from Michael Mataluni's fine podcast called The Singularity Lab.
Now, here is a simple path forward. The data that was reported is intriguing enough, at least to me, to suggest that we move this subject away from the talking points of politicians or national security advisors or military personnel to the realm of science. It's sufficiently intriguing for scientists to look into it. And, the sky in many geographical locations is not classified. We can look up and monitor the sky. So, and in fact, we don't need to use government-owned instruments. We can buy off-the-shelf cameras, connect them to wide-field telescopes, and feed the data that we get into state-of-the-art computer.
Anyone that has told you that the 180-day UFO report was a nothing burger failed to judge the data adequately, in my opinion. Sure, the 180-day report didn't give us as much information as I, or probably you, would have preferred. But you have to recognize it's only a preliminary report, and therefore there's simply more to come. Furthermore, the fact that a premier astrophysicist like Avi Loeb said it was enough to intrigue him to professionally study UAP is perhaps all you need to know to assess that the report was insanely valuable. Furthermore, it appears that wealthy individuals are now opening their wallets to fund the study of UFOs, something, quite frankly, that I think I predicted probably multiple times would happen as the environment surrounding this subject began to change. It's worth noting that sometimes being excessively pessimistic is actually the naive position to hold. We have all witnessed firsthand how scientists and academics responded to the Condon report that was publicly published in 1969, January. That report has often been cited as having a long-lasting negative impact on the interest from academics into the UFO subject. Here is a quote from the Condon report itself. Our general conclusion is that nothing has come from the study of UFOs in the past 21 years that has added to scientific knowledge. Careful consideration of the record as it is available to us leads us to conclude that further extensive study of UFOs probably cannot be justified in the expectation that science will be advanced thereby. Now, I grant you that the report's recommendation against further research had caveated that by expressing that that may not be true for all time. Nevertheless, even with any caveats or qualifications in that report, to me, its overarching message on UFOs was just to let the subject go. And it had that influence on academia for decades to come. And I don't think that was a good thing for science or humanity by any stretch of the imagination. Let's dig into the new effort that Avi Loeb is heading. Now here's the website, and the first thing you're going to recognize is that it's a harvard.edu website, which I think is noteworthy. The project Avi Loeb is heading is called the Galileo Project. The Galileo Project, quote, daring to look through new telescopes. I like that reference quite a bit. The reference is to the idea that during the time of Galileo, there were many people unwilling to look at the evidence or look through the telescopes, as it were, to see that there was very persuasive evidence that indeed the earth was not the center of the universe, and that instead of the sun orbiting the earth, in actuality, the earth orbited the sun. And of course, Avi Loeb is using this metaphor to apply to UAP, that we need to actually engage in studying UAP and look through those proverbial telescopes in order to ascertain if there's actually anything to the proposition that our planet is being engaged by non-human machines. Of course, Avi Loeb himself said it could be a weather phenomena or otherwise, but nevertheless, the only way to find out is to actually investigate. And very interestingly, the former head of ATIP, Lou Elizondo, has also alluded to, or has also expressed this expression of the need to look through the telescope. In the following clip from the podcast, Theories of Everything with Kurt Jaimungal, great podcast, by the way, he asks Elizondo, and this was published on June 23rd, he asked Elizondo, if the general public was able to see and know what you've seen and were able to know through the evidence that was exposed to you while working at ATIP, what would the next week look like from the general public? How would we respond? And he gave an amazing answer. And the totality of that answer is something I will discuss in full at a future time. But for now, I just want to show you one component of it, which ties in directly, frankly, with what astrophysicist Avi Loeb is getting at with his new endeavor called the Galileo Project.
I think the scientific and academic community is going to have to take a real hard look at itself and see why it repeated the same mistakes it did when Galileo first proposed that the Earth was not the center of the solar system. Hubris is a big part of that.
All right, folks, we're back to the website. I'm just going to read a little bit of it, and then we'll talk about it a little afterwards. But notice that on the website it says that Professor Avi Loeb is the head of the Harvard Astronomy Department, Center of Astrophysics, Harvard and Smithsonian. Anyways, activities. The Galileo Project Research Group will aim to identify the nature of UAP and Oumuamua-like interstellar objects using the standard scientific method based on a transparent analysis of open scientific data to be collected using optimized instruments. The Galileo Project follows three major avenues of research. Number one, obtain high-resolution, multi-detector UAP images, discover their nature. A picture is worth 1,000 words. For example, a megapixel image of the surface of a human-scale UAP object at a distance of a mile will allow to distinguish the label, made in country X, from the potential alternative made by ETCY. I think that's extraterrestrial civilization. On a nearby exoplanet in our galaxy, this goal will be accomplished by searching for UAP with a network of mid-sized, high-resolution telescopes and detector arrays with suitable cameras and computer systems distributed in select locations. The data will be open to the public, and the scientific analysis will be transparent. Now with number 2 and 3. Search for and in-depth research on Oumuamua-like interstellar objects. The Galileo Project Research Group also will utilize existing and future astronomical surveys, such as the Future Legacy Survey of Space and Time at the Versa C. Rubin Observatory, to discover and monitor the properties of interstellar visitors to the solar system. We will conceptualize and design, potentially in collaboration with interested space agencies or space ventures, a launch-ready space mission to image unusual interstellar objects such as Oumuamua by intercepting their trajectories on their approach to the sun, or by using ground-based survey telescopes to discover interstellar meteors. Number 3, search for extraterrestrial civilizations, satellites. I think that's what ETC is. Discovering potential 1 meter scale or smaller satellites that may be exploring Earth, e.g. in polar orbits a few hundred kilometers above Earth, may become feasible with VRO in 2023 and later, but if radar, optical, and infrared technologies have been mastered by an ETC, then very sophisticated large telescopes on Earth might be required. We will design advanced algorithmic and AI, DL, object recognition, and fast filtering methods that the Galileo Project intends to deploy initially on non-orbiting telescopes. Now, I really don't have to say much. I think it's glaringly obvious that this is a incredible new development. This is well-funded and an open scientific effort, something that, frankly, I would argue the vast majority of people who are interested in UFOs have wanted for a very, very long time. Now, don't get it twisted. There are other very legitimate efforts going on right now to scientifically study UFOs, but this seems to be the most academically grounded one at the current time. I suspect that this will only spread further, and it will become much more common for our institutions of investigation to look into UAP. It's and also I want to say that during that Michael Maddaloni episode where he interviewed Avi Loeb said that he was in talks with highly or very wealthy individuals for potential funding of research into UAP. I'm pretty sure that the Galileo project is what he was referencing. It looks like it has come to full fruition. So this is incredible. This is truly an amazing situation, because I think that people who are interested in UFOs get a very incorrect assessment by some people that we are not science-oriented and we are not fans of science and UAP is just fantasy to us, when that could not be further from the truth. We have opinions about what UAP represent, but that doesn't contradict our desire for science to get involved, something we've wanted for the longest of times. That being said, I want to get a little philosophical with you, if you don't mind. I do suspect that this revelation will bother some people within the UFO field for a very simple reason. As UFOs become much more mainstream and accepted and the stigma begins to rightfully evaporate, particularly some of the bigger voices or people who have even a little prominence in this field, or even just people that feel special and don't have any prominence in this field, they may psychologically feel a little threatened by this development, because what they may perceive is going to happen is that they're no longer part of this special exclusive club. Oh, I'm in the UAP, but the rest of the world, man, they say it's all bunk. Well, that's not really happening anymore, actually. Not on a governmental level, and as we have just seen, not on a scientific institutional level. Beyond feeling like you're in this exclusive special club, some of the more prominent people in this field may be like, oh no, oh no, oh no. I love being a big fish in a small pond, but now I might become a small fish in a large, amazingly vast pond. And I understand that, because I feel that a little too. Oh, that's right. I'm going to be honest with you and going to expose my deficiencies as a human being. Yeah, there was a few moments here and there where I said, I'm feeling a little less special now. And I'm human. Now, let's not get it twisted. I have felt that here and there internally, but I would never let a foolish feeling dictate my assessment or my moral compass, or I would never let it dictate my perspective. Or I would never let it alter the answer to the question of what's best for humanity. So while I have felt that a little bit, because I'm a human being and I'm deficient, I'm still overall, and not even overall, completely overjoyed that this is happening. Okay? Yeah, I may feel a little less special, but isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth it? Hell yes, it's worth it. And so I hope we can all be mature enough not to allow our feelings to have sway over us, but instead to acknowledge our feelings and then to have an analysis of it and be in charge of how we move forward, and not allowing our feelings to dictate our approach to reality, but our intellect to dictate our approach to reality. So on an intellectual basis, this is absolutely stunning. This is incredible. Harvard University. And I'm not saying that science has never taken a stab at UAP, but this is huge. And it's obvious that we are living a sea change right now. Now, some people say, oh, this has all happened again. This is just the same as 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And to that I would say, first of all, I don't agree, because I believe in something called the accumulation principle as it pertains to UAP. I don't know if that's ever been discussed before, but it's just a little principle that I made up in my mind. And that is, you cannot possibly say this is merely a repetition of the past and therefore holds no greater significance. You cannot possibly say that, because everything is built upon everything that precedes it. So, yes, there were hearings decades ago on UAP within the legislative branch. That's true. And yes, in the 50s, 60s, we had prominent people talking about UFOs, but this is built upon that even further. And because there is so much history, therefore the pressure increases for transparency to come from our government. So you can't merely boil it down to it's a repetition. That to me is so unsophisticated. No, it is a reinforcement, and therefore it's more powerful and more influential. Nevertheless, I'm gonna call out two humanoids. UFO Joe Merja. He's been in this a very long time, and I recollect he said that he's never seen this before. And George Knapp, who's been in this field even much longer than Joe Merja has. And you know what George Knapp has said? He said he's never seen this, and that he never thought this would happen in his lifetime. I'm sorry, brother, sister. If George Knapp is not qualified to make that statement, then I don't know who is. Because he was covering UFOs decades ago when the stigma was at its zenith. The man has a good handle on what has happened over the decades, and yet he still says that what's happening now has no equal. So, all this being said, my assessment is we are in new waters, and I suggest that you enjoy. There were some other items I was going to cover, but you know what? I think it'd be better if I leave this video as is at the 17-minute mark and cover those other items in a future video. Please